All right, the court is going to call 2019 CR 7766 dated Texas versus Alfonso Gutierrez. Could I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Michael Villarreal for the state.
For the defense?
Lorraine from.
I'm sorry, thank you.
Yes.
And are you Mr. Gutierrez?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Just a moment. All right. We're proceeding on a motion to revoke community supervision. Mr. Gutierrez, did you review documents with your attorney entitled motion to revoke community supervision and first amendment motion to revoke community supervision?
No, I have not.
I'll let, we have discussed it, Your Honor, but I'll show them copies right now.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Judge, I'm gonna make a copy. I think she only has a digital copy.
Of course. All right, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, Judge, I had a recall from this morning, Mr. Burciaga, Mark Burciaga.
All right, and is this case that's been indicted?
I think so, Judge. Let me see.
All right, well, let me make sure I have the file.
Yes, it is. It's a 2022 case.
Thank you. Just give us a moment.
Yes, you need this trigger.
All right, Mr. Martinez, is this the only case your client has?
Yes, Judge.
All right, have you had a chance to confer with the state? You're on mute.
I think it's the first time we've been set.
All right, who's the, Ms. Hayden, are you the prosecutor who's working on Mark Anthony Burciaga? All right, Ms. Hayden, are you the person who's working on Mark Anthony Burciaga?
Your Honor, sorry, I had a phone call from another prosecutor about a case. I don't, was that set
Child
today?
Division?
It's
Huh?
on this morning's, it's a solicitation case, Michelle. I don't know if those are family violence.
Yeah, no, those aren't ours.
All right, thank you. Just give us a moment. No problem. Oh, Miss Sparks. See, I keep thinking just of your first name only. On this case, have you had a chance to confer?
No, Judge.
Do you know if you have all the discovery?
I know, but I'll run up there I'll be really quick. Judge.
Oh, no, don't run.
Okay, I'll walk very fast.
Okay. All right, Mr. Martinez,
Yes,
I'm
Judge.
going to give your client a 30-day reset, but I'd like for you to have a chance to confer with the state so that we can see if there's any outstanding discovery that they may have.
Okay, Judge.
So she's going to log on in just a moment.
I didn't even know.
And Ms. Ferguson, can I have a 30-day reset in the chat box?
So then I'll call you back. Thank you.
All right, so your next court date, Mr. Burciago, is going to be on April 19th.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you'll stay on, and Mr. Martinez, I'm going to let you confer with the state just to see where you are.
Okay, Judge. But did you say Mr. Burciaga could be excused?
Yes, you can be excused.
Okay. You can call me this afternoon, Mr. Burciaga.
Yes, sir, I will.
Thank you.
And then as soon as they log in, I'll put you in a breakout room with them, Mr. Martinez, and then you can be excused from the breakout room.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, Mr. Martinez, I'm going to send you to breakout room number 1, and after you confer, you can leave from that room.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Efron, have you had a chance to review the documents with your client?
Yes, Your Honor, I think we're ready.
All right, the court is going to call 2019 CR 7766, State of Texas versus Alfonso Buccieri. Could I have parties announced for the record for the state,
Michael Maria, state.
for the defense?
Lorraine Efron?
And are you Alfonso Buccieri?
Yes, ma'am, I am, Your Honor.
All right, and am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
It's Buccieri.
Buccieri, okay, I'll try to remember that.
Thank you.
Mr. Buccieri, I'm going to show you what's entitled Motion to Revoke Community Supervision and First Amendment Motion to Revoke Community Supervision. Did you have a chance to review those documents with your attorney, and did you understand them?
Briefly, yes.
All right, do you need more time to review?
No,
Are you the same Alfonso Buteri, who was placed on community supervision and cause number 2019 CR 7766 for the offense of violation of sex offender registration annual on October 28, 2019 for a term of 5 years? Is that you?
yes, ma'am, I am.
All right, state.
And Your Honor, this is a matter of this court's preference. Do you want me to read each allegation and then plead? to
Yes,
each one?
please.
Violated condition number 1, on or about the 5th day of November 2019 in Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere committed the offense of violation of sex offender registration annual and violation condition number 1.
How do you plead to that, true or not true, Mr. Bucieri?
Trying to remember if I did that. Okay, not true.
Violated condition number 5, on or about the 1st day of January 2020 in Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere defendant there failed to comply with the instructions of the Community Supervision and Corrections Department Sex Offender Program, and that the defendant failed to report for the months of November and December 2019, violation condition number 5.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
Violated condition number 9, on or about the 19th day of November 2019 in Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere failed to report a change of address to the supervision office within 48 hours in violation of condition number 9.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
On or about the 5th day of November 2019, Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere failed to comply with the instructions of the Bear County Community Supervision and Corrections Department. Sorry. Sex offender program, and that the defendant failed to register as a sex offender with the appropriate law enforcement agency and provide verification of such registration to a supervision officer in violation of condition number 25A.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
In the next violation, Your Honor, for purposes of the record, the state is going to waive the next 2 violations of condition number 1.
Any objection to the waivers or violation of conditions number 1
No,
and
Your Honor.
1?
No, Your Honor.
Violation condition number 1, on or about the 23rd day of July 2021 in Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere committed the offense of failure to identify in violation of condition number 1.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
Violated condition number 5, in Bear County, Texas, the defendant Alfonso Butere, defendant there failed to comply with the instructions of the Bear County Community Supervision and Corrections Department Sex Offender Program, and the defendant failed to report for the months of January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December of 2020 in violation of condition number 5.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
Violated condition number 5 in Bear County, Texas, defendant Alfonso Butere, defendant there failed to comply with the instructions of the Bear County Community Supervision and Corrections Department Sex Offender Program, and that the defendant failed to report for the months of January, February, March, April, May, and June of 2021 in violation of condition number 5.
How do you plead to that, true or not true?
Not true, ma'am.
All right, state, you may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, state called Monica Molina Rodriguez.
All right, Ms. Rodriguez. Would you raise your hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your head and watch the hump because people can fall back. And if you can state your name for the record, please.
Monica Molina Rodriguez.
All right, state.
Thank you, Your Honor. You go by Miss Molina Rodriguez or Miss Rodriguez?
Mrs. Molina Rodriguez.
Miss Molina Rodriguez. How are you employed?
I am currently the manager of the sex offender unit with the Bear County Probation Department.
Okay, and do you supervise or manage a probation officer by the name of Benny Quentin?
Yes.
And so he's under your supervision with Bear County.
Yes.
Community Supervision. Are you aware of whether Mr. Puente, as far as his caseload is concerned, has a probationer by the name of Alfonso Boucher?
Yes, he is assigned to that.
And as far as you're concerned with Mr. Boucher, were you able to review his probation file?
Yes,
As far as the contents of the probation file are concerned, are the entries made within that probation file made by a person who has knowledge of the events occurring?
yes,
And does the Community Supervision Department, do they maintain those records as their normal course of business?
yes,
Were you able to review the file and see if there were conditions of probation within that file from Mr. Boucher?
yes.
And in looking at the file, were those conditions signed by the defendant?
Yes,
I guess the overarching question is, answer to a lot of our questions is, has Mr. Boucher ever reported to probation?
he reported on one occasion, which is where he went through orientation and intake.
After that date, have he ever reported to probation?
No, he has not.
Has he reported completing any conditions of probation?
No, he has not.
So as far as condition number 5 of probation, what is condition number 5?
Condition number 5 indicates that they're to report as directed by either the court or the supervision officer.
Okay. Did Mr. Boucher ever report in the months of November and December 2019?
No, he did not.
Did he ever report for the months of January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December of 2020?
No, he did not.
And did he ever report for the months of January, February, March, April, May, and June of 2021?
No, he did not.
Did the probation department do their due diligence in attempting to locate Mr. Boucher?
Yes.
Your Honor, objection hearsay.
Gotta be overruled.
You can answer the question.
Yes, due diligence was completed. An attempted field visit was completed at a residence that he claimed to assist.
And was he located at that address?
No,
Was that his actual location?
no, it was not. Outside this.
Did somebody with the probation department talk to somebody at that address?
Yes,
Based on talking with that person, was it found that Mr. Boucher was not residing at that address?
Your Honor, again, object to hearsay.
That objection will be sustained.
As far as condition number 9 of probation is concerned, what is condition number 9?
condition number 9 indicates that they're to notify the probation department of a change in address within 48 hours.
Okay, and was the probation department made aware that Mr. Boucher was arrested?
Your Honor, object to hearsay.
That'll be overruled.
No, he was. You were never made aware that he was arrested.
Oh, we were made aware that he was arrested, but he never notified us.
Okay, and that arrest date was on or about November 19th of 2019.
Yes,
And 48 hours of that, he never reported to probation that he was arrested.
yes,
So he did not.
he did not report. He did not contact us to indicate he was arrested.
As far as condition number 25A is concerned, what is condition number 25A?
Condition number 25A is particular to the sex offender unit, indicating that the probationer in our program must report and register with local law enforcement.
And did the probation department look to see if he ever registered as a
Yes.
sex offender?
Yes, we have. He is not registered. He is not registered.
Okay, are you aware when the last time he registered was?
2017.
So well after he was placed on, well before he was placed on probation on October 28th, 2019.
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Melina Rodriguez, you've never met Mr. Boucher, have you?
No.
You can't even identify if the person you're talking about is in fact this defendant sitting here, can you?
He introduced himself. But I've never met him in person.
Okay, never seen him before, correct?
No.
Okay, so you have no personal knowledge of his interaction with probation. The only information you have with regard to his probation is from reviewing those records, correct?
He does not interact with the probation department. No.
How do you know that? From the records that you're reviewing, correct?
Correct.
But otherwise, you have no personal knowledge of that.
I do have personal knowledge, if he hasn't reported, I wouldn't have knowledge if he was reporting in person.
You wouldn't have knowledge if he was reporting in person.
I would, I'm there at the office, so if he was reporting in person, I would know.
Why? Because he would come by and say hi, or you would go by and say hi to him?
I get messages sent to me when an individual checks in and reports, it will show up that they reported.
Okay, so it's, but still not anything you personally observe or experience. It's based on information you receive from another person or
Right.
party, correct? What was the arrest date that you gave us? I'm sorry, I just didn't get it down. That you said he failed to report.
He failed to report,
That he failed to report an arrest. What was it?
November 19th is the date that he failed to provide a change in address,
November 19th of what year?
2019.
Okay, and were you saying that there was some failure to report an arrest? Or did I misunderstand? I apologize if I did.
I don't have a copy of the MTR with me.
Okay, that's okay. What was the date he was placed on probation?
The 28th of October, 2019.
And what is the time period between the time of being placed in probation and the time that they come in to sign the conditions?
24 to 48 hours
And what was the date he signed his conditions?
on the 29th of October, 2019.
And then the usual first report date is within, what, like 30 days or so?
In our unit, it could be, it's within 30 days.
What is, do you know on what day of the year his annual registration report is due?
It's due on his birthday or anytime he changes an address.
Do you know when his birthday is?
I do not.
Well, let me ask you, you said the last time he registered was 2017?
That was the last update. Yes, of registration.
Okay, so that was two years prior to being placed on probation, correct?
Yes.
And are you saying that in 2017, that was the last registration date in Texas or another state?
On the Texas database.
Okay. And prior to 2017, do you know when he reported before then in Texas?
I do not.
Do you know when he moved to Texas? Do you know what the conviction was for that created this purported duty to register?
Indecency with the child. By conduct.
And do you know what year that was in?
I do not.
Do you know what state that was in?
No.
Do you have a copy of the judgment in your file?
No, not for that case.
Not one.
No, not for that case.
So your determination that he was obligated to register is based on,
The offense that he picked up for and got placed on probation was violation of sex offender registry. And when he signed his conditions, it obligated him to register with local law enforcement, which is condition 25A.
okay. Okay, but you've done no independent research or inquiry as to whether or not there's a valid judgment requiring, that would trigger a registration requirement.
This court order out of the 187.
Okay, but I'm talking about the original alleged judgment that initiated a requirement to register. You've done no independent evaluation.
I'm gonna object to relevance on at this point. He's obviously, you read it, he admitted the fact that he's on probation for violation of sex offender registration.
That objection will be sustained.
And you did not personally observe Mr. Botire to sign any conditions, did you?
No.
And you were not there to observe whether or not the conditions were read or explained to him, were you?
No.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any other questions?
No further questions.
Is this witness subject to recall or is she excused?
Not from the state.
I believe she can be excused, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. State, call your next witness.
State calls Harry Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. All right, everyone, I'm still trying to see about the court and that judgment. I've just been told by the deputy that they said it's not ready yet.
Thank you.
Sure. So we haven't forgotten you.
Thank you.
Plus you're in my eyesight. So.
I'm glad.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, you can lower your hand if you'll take a seat, watch the hump. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Harry Gonzalez.
All right, thank you. State.
Detective Gonzalez, how are you employed?
I am employed by the City of San Antonio Police Department as a police investigator.
Okay. And are you assigned to a specific unit?
I am assigned to the Special Victims Unit, Sex Offender Registration Detail.
So is it fair to say that your caseload is only dealing with sex offender registration
Yes,
and people who have alleged to have violated it?
yes,
Did you work at least one case involving a defendant by the name of Alfonso Butcher?
yes,
And specifically concerning an allegation on or about November 5th of 2019?
yes.
How are you made aware of Mr. Butcher's obligation to register?
On that particular, for that violation,
Yes.
On November 18th, 2019, I received information from one of the Bear County probation officers, Herbert Rumrow, notifying me that the defendant had been placed on probation, had failed to report, and was not residing at his.
Your Honor, I would object to hearsay.
Sustain.
And as far as this information that you received, did you investigate Mr. Boucher at that point?
Yes,
And were you able to look up when he last registered in the state of Texas?
yes,
And you remember what year he last registered in the state of Texas?
his last registration in the state of Texas was with our agency, and that was on August 22nd, 2017.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Detective Gonzalez, show you what's been marked as state exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you recognize it to be?
This is a pre-release notification. It's a document to Texas DPS. It outlines the requirements of sex offender registration. It's usually provided to a registrant for his understanding of the rules of registration. It's initialed as understanding. Most importantly, I see by this document that it was provided by the Bear County Probation Department. The issuing officer was E. Cisneros. And this indicates that this person should report to our department within 7 days of the date, October 28, 2019.
I'm just gonna leave this up here in case you need to
Thank you.
refresh your memory from it. And that particular document, does it relate to a particular person?
Yes,
And who does it relate to?
the defendant.
And the defendant being Alfonso Boucher.
Yes,
And as far as that document is concerned, and based on your investigation, is Mr. Boucher obligated to register as a sex offender under Chapter 62?
yes.
And what is his registration period?
He is a lifetime registrant.
So his length of obligation to register as a sex offender under Chapter 62 is for life, correct?
Correct.
And are you aware of what his conviction was for?
The registering offense,
Yes.
yes, he had a 1991 state of Michigan offense of criminal sexual conduct in the 4th degree. It was determined by Texas DPS that transfers over to indecency with a child by contact, and that is a registering offense.
Okay, and DPS is the authority that is obligated under Chapter 62 to make the determination of if it's a substantially similar offense under Chapter 62, correct?
Yes,
And so he has a lifetime registration for the equivalent of indecency with a child by contact.
yes,
And were you able to investigate whether Mr. Boucher, between his last registration here in 2017, here being Texas, and today, whether he has ever registered in any other jurisdiction as a sex offender?
he has not registered in another Texas jurisdiction.
And did he ever provide notice of any address change between between 2017 and today within the state of Texas?
No, he has not.
So at the conclusion of your investigation, did you make a determination as far as an arrest of Mr. Boucher?
Yes,
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Gonzalez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as state exhibit number 2, which is a certified court document. You can look through that quickly and tell me if you recognize it.
I do.
Okay, what do you recognize it to be?
That is the warrant of arrest that I drew up for the violation of failure to register.
And it's fair to say, looking on the last page of this document, this is a certified copy, correct?
Yes,
And at this time, state would move to admit state exhibit number 2. I'm going to tender your defense.
Your Honor, I would object to relevance.
is relevant to condition number 1, violate or failure to identify as a fugitive.
All right, if I could see State's Exhibit number 2. All right, with regards to State's Exhibit number 2, the objection to relevancy is overruled. State's Exhibit number 2 is admitted into evidence.
At this time, the state of passes.
Defense?
Detective, you would agree with me that you've never met Mr. Bottier before, correct?
That is correct.
And you would not be able to state with certainty, based on your own personal knowledge, whether or not the individual sitting next to me is the same individual that is the subject of your warrant, correct?
That is not correct because I've seen a photo of him. And that was him. That's how we provide that.
Okay, do you have that photo with you?
We check. I have an image.
The encroachment warrant?
Yes.
Detective, the DPS, do you have a copy of the judgment?
Excuse me, counsel, just one moment. If I could have parties approach. We're back on the record. Sorry about that.
That's okay, Judge. Detective, do you have a copy of the original judgment that DPS examined?
The original judgment from DPS.
You said DPS examined.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, do you have that with you?
Yes,
Is that something I can take a look at? or
absolutely, yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
would you,
Oh, no, please. first.
okay. Would you agree with me that this conviction was for a misdemeanor?
For misdemeanor, I do not know.
Okay. And would you agree that the obligation to register pursuant to that judgment was for a determinate amount of time, not a lifetime registration?
And Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. This is not relevant to whether he is, but whether this is a valid judgment or not. He's on probation for the same offense.
I will overrule your objection as it relates to a violation of condition number 1.
Okay. Would you agree that this triggered a registration requirement for a determined amount of time, not a lifetime registration?
Repeat, please.
You cannot tell from that judgment how long the duty to register was that was generated by that judgment, can you?
That judgment is reviewed by Texas DPS. They make a determination based on the elements, and that determination was that he is a lifetime registrant.
Okay, well, actually, you have no personal knowledge of that, do you? I mean, it's not something you reviewed.
1 minute.
I mean, you didn't.
I do have an email from DPS supporting that.
Okay. You have no personal knowledge yourself as to what length of time that duty to register was for. Do you have any personal knowledge yourself?
I don't understand that question as far as personal knowledge. DPS is referring that information, and so we base registration.
Okay, so the information you have is from another agency or another source.
Yes, they are the determinant source.
Okay, but you personally don't have any knowledge of it. You based your testimony today on what someone else has told you, correct?
The DPS relay that information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You do not know whether anyone ever told him he was signing for a lifetime registration requirement, do you?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance of his initial plea, whether he knew that that was going to be a lifetime registration in the state of Texas.
That'll be sustained.
Again, you've never met Mr. Boucheray in person, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, state.
Detective Gonzalez, based on your picture that you received in your investigation, do you think that you'd be able to identify whether Mr. Boucheray is in the courtroom?
Yes.
Your Honor, may we have the defendant remove his mask briefly for purposes of identification?
Thank you.
Do you see Mr. Boucheray in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And where is he seated?
You see it to my left, you're right.
And what is he wearing?
He is wearing an orange jumpsuit.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witnesses identify the defendant.
Yes.
Detective Gonzalez, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 3. Very sloppily, but it is 3. This is a certified document, correct?
Yes.
2 certified documents, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this document, it relates to Mr. Boucher and specifically cause number 2019 CR 7766, correct?
Yes,
And this is a judgment for that cause, correct?
yes,
And in that, we see that Mr. Boucher has been convicted of violation of sex offender registration annual,
correct,
and that he has to annually register as a sex offender.
yes,
And moving to the second half of state exhibit number 3, which is the indictment in cause number 2019, I'm sorry, CR 7766. And under that, the indictment to which this defendant pled to, it states that he is required to register and verify his registration correct.
that is correct,
And that would be for the offense of criminal sexual conduct.
yes.
You have to sign state moves to state exhibit number 3 and we're to defend.
Your Honor, these documents, I think the court are already in the court's file and could take judicial notice of them, so I have no additional objection to them.
All right, then, state exhibit number 3 is admitted into evidence.
And your honor, this has table pass list.
All right, any further questions, defense?
Detective, did you ever review Mr. Boucher's registration requirements in the state of Michigan? Did you ever do that?
Your honor, I'm going to object to the relevance.
What is the relevance?
Your Honor, my client's position is that he was no longer obligated to register as a sex offender in the state of Texas, and that in Michigan, his obligation was only for a set period of time, which expired prior to him coming here to Texas.
All right, that objection will be sustained.
I have nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
I think for the state.
All right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Excused, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, you're excused.
Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
State calls Jesus Matthias.
If you could raise your hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, please have a seat, and if you could state and spell your last name for the record, please.
All right, I'm Officer Gonzalez, of Samson Police. My last name is spelled Monsiviais.
State,
Thank you, Your honor. Officer Monsiváis, how are you employed
I'm employed with Samson Police Department.
and in what capacity?
Patrol.
So are you a patrol officer?
Yes, sir.
I want to specifically talk about a case that you reported to on July 23rd, 2021. Were you on duty that day?
Yes, sir.
And did you have to report to an address that day, the address being 10 Pecan Valley Circle?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember at what time you reported there?
I don't remember the time, but I remember it was almost midnight.
Would having a copy of your report help you refresh your memory?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach?
yes.
Officer Muncie Bias, I'm going to show you what's been marked as state's exhibits number 4 and 5. You recognize those documents.
Yes.
And state's exhibit number 4, is this a copy of your report?
Yes, sir.
And state's exhibit number 5, is that a copy of the arrest and booking sheet related to that same case?
Yes, sir.
You can review your report and tell me about what time you responded to that address.
It was about 3 in the morning.
And originally, do you remember why you were being dispatched to that location?
It was
Your
a
Honor,
section.
I would object to that as being irrelevant.
Your Honor, it's relevant to who he talks to, why he talks to them, in his course of investigation.
All right, that'll be overruled.
I responded for a sexual assault.
Okay. When you originally arrived on scene, you were the first person you talked to,
Victim.
the victim. After you talked to the victim, based on your conversation with her, what did you do next?
She told me the suspect was.
Your Honor, object to hearsay.
Sustained.
And Your Honor, we're not offering for the truth of the matter, sort of just to how he continued his part of the investigation.
That objection will be sustained.
Thank you. Based on your conversation with him, what did you do? Or I'm sorry, with the victim, what did you do next?
She told me that.
Your Honor, object.
And again,
Sustained.
you can't tell us what somebody said, but what did you do?
I proceeded to go inside the house.
Okay, and inside the house, was there a particular person that you were looking for?
Yes. Alfonso.
Okay, and at that point, from the information that you received from the victim, did you consider him a witness or suspect in the case?
So
And based on that, did you ask him to identify himself?
I did.
Okay, and when he identified himself, did he provide the name Alfonso Boutre?
No, he didn't.
How do you know that well, I just say first, the first thing that he provided to you, did you run it? Did you see that came back to an actual person?
I did.
And did you have any success in that?
No.
Subsequent to that, did you make an investigation to identify him?
Yes.
And what did you do?
Incident to arrest, I searched his wallet and he had multiple names in his wallet, IDs in his wallet with multiple different names. So I ran every single name until I got a return on him.
Okay, and eventually that return was for Alfonso Boutre.
That's correct.
And when you identified him, was he a wanted person?
He was a wanted person.
And eventually that night, you arrested him, and in part you arrested him for that warrant, correct?
Correct.
And did you also book him for the offense of failure to identify as a fugitive?
I did.
You see, Mr. Boutre, and Your Honor, it just for purposes of an important identification, that we have been partially removed this mask.
Yes.
Officer Muncie Bias, do you see Mr. Boutre in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
And can you point at him and identify him by a piece of clothing?
He's to my left, the right.
And what is he wearing?
No restrictions.
And he is the only person in this courtroom, correct, wearing an orange jumpsuit.
That's correct.
So again, when you contacted him, the name he provided to you was not Alfonso Boutre.
No, sir.
I'll pass it.
That's-
Are you aware that Mr. Boucher has changed his name?
I'm not aware.
Okay. And the identification that you were able to make was actually based on the identification you obtained from his wallet, correct?
That is correct.
Nothing further at this time.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
He's excused from the state.
Excused.
Your excuse. State, call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would just pass it before take judicial notice of the file of the state for arrest.
Defense, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Then the court will take judicial notice of the court's file. Defense,
We have nothing, Your Honor, at this time.
all right, then the court will hear argument.
Your ID is really clear. I'm sorry, state first.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I should have waited to be
No,
recognized.
no.
A little rusty. I think we all are. I think it's very clear from this case, from the first witness, where this defendant has only showed up to probation for his initial probation appointment, which was about 48 hours after he was placed on probation. After that, he didn't do anything except for picking up 2 new offenses, which were clearly established through Detective Gonzalez and Officer Monsiváis. He hasn't registered since 2017. He continues to remain unregistered in the state, regardless of whether he thinks he has to register. That's not something that needs to be litigated on your probation. That's something that you do before. And again, it's clear from this case that this defendant pled. He put himself on probation, right? And so I think it's clear from the record that he's violated all the conditions that the state is moving forward on. And we're just asking that the court find that they're true and you revoke his supervision.
Defense.
Your Honor, probation was not able to identify him positively in court. The violations appear to be originating from 2017. He wasn't placed on probation until 2019. There's no information as to how long the duty to report was out of Michigan. The this officer, the detective who testified here, had no independent knowledge himself of what the obligation requirements were. And there hasn't been any testimony as to how long he's actually resided in Texas. He has, there's no knowledge as to whether or not he changed his name and as to whether or not the name he gave was a name that he had changed to. And the failure to ID was in fact the information to identify him was actually obtained from his own wallet. We would submit that no violation of his probation conditions have occurred, and we would ask the court to deny the motion to revoke.
All right. The court is finding violation of conditions 1, 5, 25A, 1, 5, 5, and 9 true. Defense, if you could go over trial court certification with your client,
Okay.
and then the court will make a decision on whether or not to grant the motion. And the court will hear argument as to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, we're back on the record. The court is going to grant the motion. I'll hear argument on punishment. It says that actually his punishment is to be for 5 years. That's what the previous plea bargaining agreement was.
Yes, Your Honor, we're just asking the court not reform the sentence.
And we're asking the court to reform the sentence to 2 years.
I mean, but the question for the court would be, it appears that Mr. Boucher, based upon all of the testimony that the court has heard, he has done absolutely nothing on probation.
Well, he did do something, Your Honor. He picked up 2 new criminal offenses. So I don't think you get the benefit of committing new offenses and the court reducing your sentence.
So it appears that he did nothing on probation. He didn't abide by any of the conditions that the previous judge placed upon him. And I say previous judge, a different judge actually took the plea bargain agreement. I can tell by the writing, it's not my own.
Your Honor, and Mr. Boucher would submit to the court that he believes that the obligation to register here in the state of Texas is wrongful, based on a wrongful conviction out of the state of Michigan. And that the failure to ID is not clear cut. In other words, I would submit that maybe in front of a jury beyond a reasonable doubt, there might be some reasonable doubt as to whether or not he failed to ID. And so in consideration of those things, we're asking the court to refine the sentence to a lower number.
All right. I'm going to send you to 5 years in the prison, give you credit for any time served, Chapter 62 compliance, $1,500 fine, time and money running concurrent. Mr. Boucher, I'm showing you what's entitled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Rights to Appeal. Did you have a chance to review that with your attorney? Did you understand it and did you sign it? All right. You do have a right to appeal, a limited right to appeal, and that's as it relates to the allegations that we heard, the allegations in the motion, not the fact that you were actually on probation. Do you understand, Mr. Boucher? You have a limited right to appeal. That right to appeal is related to the hearing that we just had today, the allegations that were put into evidence. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good luck to you, Mr. Boucher. Let me give you this. And we go off the record, Mr. Boucher, if there's some issue with some other judgment, you need to, if there's some other issue with some other judgment, then you need to speak to an attorney about that. Sure. No, just a second. That's all. Everyone just give me one moment. Hello? Hi. Hey, Angie, can I give you a call right back? Okay, I'm gonna call you right back. I'm just finishing up the hearing. Okay, thank you, but I do love the ring. Okay, okay, go away. Ring. I don't think people realize, when I see 318 area code, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Especially when it's not family members, it's just 318. I'm like,
Yeah.
All right, the court is calling 2020 CR 1963, State of Texas versus Sammy Villa. I have parties announced for the record for the state,
Marcus Sanders.
for the defense.
Matthew Allen.
And are you Mr. Villa?
Pittsburgh.
All right, we were here for a contested hearing. Just one moment. Deputy. Are we on mute? Okay, thank you. All right, we were here for a contested hearing, but both the defense and state said there is a witness. Is that correct? State and defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Judge, that's correct.
All right, and state, have you tried contacting the witness?
We have a judge for a couple of weeks now. He's been with us.
All right. All right, and defense, you're asking for a continuance?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we're gonna reset this then for April 4th at 2 p.m.
Thank you,
And
Judge.
if anyone needs to subpoena anyone, you need to subpoena whomever you need to subpoena.
Understood, Judge.
All right, thank you. Any questions, Mr. Villa?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close the record. And we are going to stop live stream and we will see everyone back.